Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour with your host, Jeff Townsend, aka the Indie Podcast Father. I'm your co-host, Greg, from Indie Drop-In Network. Podcasting Power Hour is recorded live every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitter Spaces. Every week, an experienced panel of podcasters and other experts will tackle your podcasting questions. We will, of course, put links to all of our guests and any relevant information in the show notes. All right, let's get this party started.
Hello, friends, and you are my friends. Oh, that felt great. Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour. I'm your host, Jeff Townsend, and as usual, my I'm just going to say first officer, helping me through this journey, this flight, is Greg of old.
I'm a number one that performs like a number two. So Jeff, did you take a screenshot so that you have proof you have friends?
No, I didn't. Maybe next time.
Yeah, you better get it.
Fuzz is also helping out. Fuzz Martin, Mayor McFuzz. Thanks for helping out, Fuzz.
What's happening? I just knocked over a Barbie metal lunchbox filled with bracelets, and I've been cursing loudly up until this point. So, hi, everybody.
The chaos, the absolute chaos.
Yeah. If I had $1 for every time I woke up in the middle of the night and stepped on some Barbie accessory or Lego and like let out some swear words, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, I could have made a couple hundred right there. So, welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to Podcast Power Hour. Glad to be here. I got nothing else.
That's fair. All right. Now, the master of the brand tan man.
Jesus Christ.
Tanner Campbell.
Hey, everybody. All right. I'm so master of the brand, I change my profile pic every 3 days. That's how on brand I am all the time. Thanks for having me, you guys.
How is your brand, by the way?
It's doing well. It's surviving, making money, selling shows. Life's pretty good right now, actually. Life is good.
Get rich or die trying, right?
That's what 50 Cent said, I think. My girlfriend calls him 50 cents. I haven't told her that's not right yet.
Hall of Famer Dave Jackson's also going to be assisting us this evening. Dave, how are you doing?
Good. I had a friend once, but I forgot to feed it and it died. So
was it Tamagotchi?
Glad to be here.
Dave, what will you do without you, man? I thought you had Domino's tonight. I can't keep track of you and Fuzz's Monday schedules.
No. Nope.
I thought maybe you and Evo and company just got together and played Domino's on some Mondays.
Like a couple of old men in New York in Central Park. They're just playing. You know what I mean? Pizza, you game.
That's it.
Sorry.
Oh, that's great.
So tonight we do not have a guest or anything. So it's very critical we get some engagement from you all. Come up, ask questions. If you're not comfortable or unable, of course, there's a comment section down there where you can engage in the conversation. So you can start requesting to come up and ask something. In the meantime, Greg, I'll kick it off to you to start the evening here.
Great. As I scarf down yogurt and hope you don't say my name. So to get started today, I thought we would talk about everyone's favorite topic, video. Now, what you might have noticed is some people do video, some people don't do video, but everyone has an opinion whether or not they do it or they don't do it. So I just wanted to kind of start off with a little test that I kicked off last week, where I've started posting shorts. So I created a true crime TikTok, Instagram, and of course I've already had a YouTube channel. And I started making a short, less than 1 minute kind of recommendation post. Like, hey, if you're looking for a true crime podcast recommendation, my recommendation for the week is, this week it's Dying to Be Found. You can check that out here. And then here's a clip. So it's like 20 seconds of me talking or 15 seconds of me talking, and then like a 30-second clip. And that's it. So we'll see how that's going. This is only the second week of that, but the YouTube channel is doing. I thought it would do nothing, and it's doing a little bit more than nothing. So, somewhat excited about that.
Well, how is the TikTok? 2 weeks is a little bit. You should be getting some kind of traction in 2 weeks. How is the TikTok doing?
Really bad.
About as well as your YouTube channel, Tanner.
Really bad.
Do I have a YouTube channel?
You did for a second.
You don't remember you spent $10,000 of equipment and it lasted 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah. You know what I actually did the other day was I got tired of Gmail and I was like, I don't need Gmail anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. And I moved over to Fastmail. And then I realized that because I deleted my Gmail, I deleted all my stuff. I don't think things through. I just kind of do things in the moment and I make big mistakes.
All right, Tanner, we'll let you kick it off here. What's your take on this whole video thing? I'm all for it.
I mean, I think,
right.
Yeah, I think video is its own beast, just like podcasting in the audio traditional sense is its own beast. So I think if you approach video with the intent of creating content which is video centric and which is formatted in the way that the users of whatever video platform you're using, TikTok or YouTube, are accustomed to consuming video, then I think that you should, if you have the time and the bandwidth to do it, approach it. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. I think that if you're going to just repost your audio as, static images, I do this. I just started doing this because my host, Sounder, will create, follow the bouncing ball kind of faded, blurred background text over that. And they'll upload it automatically. I don't have to do anything. I literally just upload the episode and it automatically happens. I don't even have to press a button. So if it doesn't add to your production value, if it doesn't add to your production schedule or your workload, I'm all for telling people to do that. It can't hurt to have content on YouTube, but I wouldn't expect it to do that much because all you're doing is repurposing content. And I think I've spoken a number of times about how I feel about repurposing content. It's kind of disrespectful to the person on the platform on which you are posting that repurposed content because it's not what they're there for. I think every episode of Good Morning Podcasters gets published automatically to YouTube. And I'll tell you that an episode that published 2 months ago has gotten 5 views, 15 views, 6 views. Now, to be fair, I don't promote my channel. So these are all organic, accidental. People are just watching them. So maybe that's not terrible. But I have another video on my YouTube channel, which is not promoted. And it's a review of my Studio Bricks booth. And I think at this point, Studio Bricks review, maybe, I think it's got a few thousand. It's got 2.4 thousand reviews, 2,400 reviews.
What are you trying to say here?
What do you mean?
Well, okay, get to the point of your opinion here.
The point's there. If you're not creating, eat my ass. The point is that if it's not created for the platform upon which you are creating it, you're probably wasting your time, and doubly if you're not marketing it.
Unless it takes no time, and then
unless it takes no time, and then it's right. It's not an investment. So who cares?
And that's why when I was creating my short form stuff, I wanted to do something kind of for the platform to see if I could drive users, in YouTube's case, to my audiogram only video, right? That's kind of like a twofer kind of test. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but it only takes me a minute to record a minute, video with no editing or anything. So it doesn't take a lot of time.
So
go ahead, Fez. Sorry, I was about to key up.
We experimented with this with my wife's podcast, Tech Tools for Teachers, last year in season 4 because we wanted to. Actually, honestly, I was listening to Tanner and I thought it might be fun to play around with. So we created specific how-to videos. They weren't repurposed from the actual podcast, but they were another 5 minutes where she actually does an on-screen walkthrough of some sort of tech tool that we're talking about. It took another probably hour and a half onto the editing between creating it editing it in Premiere and getting it published to YouTube. The added time, there are a few videos where we've gotten over 100 or over 500 views, but for the most part, they're hovering around like 25 to, I don't know, 70, it looks like. So it really, in the grand scheme, we didn't think it was worth the extra time that we were putting into it. Now, because they're how-tos, they may get some longevity down the road, but we really didn't want to repurpose things. We wanted to try doing something that was essentially an added value to the podcast, and just I don't think we found that value there yet. So
it's kind of strange that this is even debated, right? Because as audio-only podcasters, we say to newcomers who are going to be audio-only podcasters, they're like, look, you can't just open up your laptop and use your built-in mic and make crappy stuff and put it up and expect it to go anywhere. And it's almost like when we get to talking about video, we don't say you can't just take your crappy audio and post it to YouTube, a video platform, and expect it to work. We're a little more, I don't know, precious about that for some reason.
I mean, you can witness a more than half-hearted attempt of mine to do this. And, you know, whether it was successful or not, I guess is a matter of perspective. But, you know, you can look up on YouTube, one of my older shows called Fan Dummies, like Dummies. And it's got 93 videos. That's easily a year and a half, something like that, of effort. It's got 718 subscribers. So, you know, I mean, it takes years to build an audience. It's not fast on any platform. Do I think it would have eventually gotten to the point where it was successful? Probably. I mean, we have some, you know, I'm just looking at the two videos that just is on my screen right now. One of them's got 785 views. One of them has 2.5 thousand views. And I've got some in the 60 and 70,000 views, but it's hit or miss. Right? Like I got just as many with 100 views. So, you know, and you can go on there and see how I did it. It's more of the traditional way where we record the podcast being, you know, we video the podcast being recorded, and then we cut up clips so that we get the SEO benefit of the different clips, and so that people can jump to the right thing. And, you know, I would say, I bet you my Patreon subscribers mostly came from YouTube. And then when we quit, I was telling Jeff this earlier today, the only place that anyone commented, I mean, I'm talking Twitter, Instagram, anywhere, which we had thousands of followers on those. The only place anyone commented like, hey, where did these folks go, was on YouTube.
You brought up SEO, and Michelle Jackson, my favorite Jackson, by the way. I can't say that enough. She did leave a comment down here saying that it impacts discoverability too. So when we're thinking about this, you know, what is it worth it or whatever? And I'm not going to lie to you. Lately, I would say over 50% of the podcasts I listen to has been on YouTube, whether it be specific clips from something or just the entire podcast. Now that I've had premium for a while, but I've been utilizing it for that feature. You know, the screen will shut off, but I still listen. So I have found myself doing that quite a bit lately. Dave Jackson, what do you got?
Well, for me, I was thinking about what I did today. I listened to podcast while I was making food. I watched video while I was eating it. When I walked around the neighborhood, I was listening to podcasts. So I think it depends on what I'm doing. But in terms of my thing, kind of what Tanner was talking about, is I feel like I did one short on my YouTube channel, and it just seemed weird because I didn't even pull out a gimbal or a stand, and it's all, you know, blurry and can't hold my hand still. And I was like, yeah, that just looks like crap. And I get that that's kind of not the whole point of it, but the fact that it's supposed to be quick, get in and get out. And I just thought, okay, I have an old iPhone, I think 6 lying around here. I'm like, I need to fire that thing up, put it on a stand so that if I want to do shorts, I can fire it up, look into the camera, say my thing, hit stop, and just post it to YouTube. And that would be cool. But in my current state, I'm like, to me, it looked really Well, it sounded like in the same way that your first podcast usually sucks, your first short was pretty awful as well. And I was just like, all right, I need to work on this. I mean, I've got the lighting and everything, but it was just one of those where I was like, yeah, that's not a great representation of my brand at the moment.
I would love
But
to
I
see
also,
that. Do you have that video still?
oh, it's still there. It's still there. The other thing to keep in mind is YouTube and podcasting, in my world at least, have two separate audiences where I've had people join my membership site and go, oh, you do audio stuff too? And I'm like, yeah. So I think there are those people that, I don't know who the latest, greatest, they worship at the altar of Cutie Pie or whoever's big this week. And then there are other people that, all they know is true crime because that's all podcasts are. So I think it's two separate audiences. So I think it's worth doing. It's just a matter of, it does take a heck of a lot more time, even a short. I think once I get it set up, because that's nice. And in a way, it's going to transcribe it. So you almost don't need a show description. And it's like 1.5 minutes long. So if it does need any kind of description, 50 words to describe what's in it, maybe.
But you utilize video in other ways for your content as well, though. I mean, you have your Saturday morning thing that I enjoy typing crazy things in the chat just to see how you react. But regardless, you do utilize video well.
Yeah, I do that. And then I'm lying through my teeth right now. My YouTube channel, it says new video every Wednesday. And that has not been the case in many, many moons. So I either need to change my banner or start doing videos. But it's just one of those things that I'll come up with an idea and, 2 hours later it's done and it's a 4-minute video. And I was like, man, that is a lot of time for, just, a 4-minute video.
Why is it not okay for us to just, I mean, you use it for your Saturday morning thing, right? That's where you're most consistent. And it performs for you, right? In that case,
for the most part, yeah. I'm always amazed, and it's weird because I don't know that I get that much traffic after Saturday. So my stats look great because it's all the live people that didn't leave. But I'd have to go back and check the stats.
I don't know why we do this with platforms. It kind of makes me nuts that the idea that it's not just okay that you use YouTube for live streaming. It serves a purpose, and that's really all you're doing with YouTube. Why do we need every platform to become like a primary channel? Why do we do that to ourselves? I feel like we're doing that everywhere.
Because that's when the platform pushes you. When you utilize it fairly exclusively.
Yeah, but Dave doesn't use it exclusively, and it serves its purpose as a live stream platform for him. So every Saturday he's got a nice audience. He can engage with that audience, and then he doesn't use YouTube anymore.
Right. But if let's say you recorded your entire podcast and you made 3 clips a week, then YouTube would push people to your live stream instead of the, vice versa.
Yeah, I haven't really seen that bear out, but who knows with what the changes they're trying to make. Hopefully they make good changes. I'd love to see everyone's no video podcast episodes uploaded to YouTube get 1,000 views a day. I mean, that'd be amazing.
No, I don't think no video podcasts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying actual video where there's a cohesive story that you've, put in some B-roll. It has decent music, but it doesn't have to be a feature film.
Michelle's up here. Michelle, what do you got? You brainiac.
So I have a very different take on this, like completely different. One, I have the philosophy that people should do things ugly. So I feel like you're talking about having this like really cohesive and beautiful video. And for most people, testing out the platform will take a lot longer than they anticipate. So I've just recently decided to add video to my platform. However, I've been creating content for 10 years, and I started as a blogger and then added a podcast, and this is now the last thing that I've decided to add. For me, my personal view is that podcasts are audio. I don't really get this like forcing podcasts to be video. I just think it's a video. So I don't really get that. But the video content that I'm adding to my to my platform supplements the other things that I do. So say, for example, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm in different spaces, but I'm primarily in the personal finance space. So if I do a podcast about women and money, which is what I'm working on for the fall, maybe the content would be answering a specific question that I know is getting searches. So I'm not just like kind of slapping stuff up on YouTube because I'm busy. Like I'm getting sponsors, I'm trying to make money. So it has to make sense to do these things. I think my point is it has to make sense to do what you're doing. So if people are creating video just because they feel like they should, it's a complete waste of your time. If you understand why you're creating video, then do it, but it does not by any means need to be perfect. In fact, I'm recording all my video content for the fall because I have a strategy and I'm not editing it. I'm not adding bells and whistles. I'm not adding music. I'm not doing any of that bullshit because I have to first test out that I'm even going to consistently do it, that it makes sense, that it's creating a worthwhile part to the ecosystem that is my overall brand. So I think that's something to consider.
So all of that was rad. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said, but I think that there's a worthwhile distinction here that I want to point out. And I think I'm right, but you're going to tell me, Michelle, if I'm not right. You have a business built around your content. And so your monetization strategy has nothing to do with audience size. Is that right?
Right. So I would agree with that. I mean, ideally you do want to grow a larger audience, but I look more at, I can't believe I just forgot the word. It's been one of those days. I look at how active my audience is currently, like how receptive they are to my content. And so it doesn't have to be this massive audience, right? Like I'm not trying to have 100,000 people follow me, so there's that too.
And this is, I think if you are somebody, this is why I talk about having businesses wrapped, and Greg talks about it too, having businesses wrapped around your podcast as much as is humanly possible, because 100 listeners to someone whose primary strategy is grow an audience, make money off of programmatic ads or host read ads and CPM model, 100 listeners is not worth anything. But to Michelle, 100 listeners might be 5 leads that might be worth each $1,200 for, a 3-month service or something. So I think that if you're in Michelle's wheelhouse, if you've got a business wrapped around your podcast, then to not be using YouTube to get those, 10 or 20 or 50 views, someone in those 10 or 20 or 50 views might want to give you $12,000. So
but
definitely a little different.
I agree with you, but I will say in my business, I'm not coaching people like that. That is like very low on my interests, like my list of interests. Mm-hmm. So for what I do, I am working with brands, but I also have my own products my own products in particular that I have created and are the things that are the lead magnets in my shows or on my YouTube channel. My products are the things that are in my ads so that people can, go to those products. So I think the better way to put it is I'm creating an ecosystem and it's very, very well thought out because it takes a lot of time to do it well. And in my view, a lot of podcasters are still in the infancy of growing whatever it is they're trying to do with their shows. And so like I said, I've been doing this for years. And so I'm further along in the strategy piece. And I think most people listening to this conversation are at the beginning stages of thinking about strategy.
By the way, Michelle, formal invitation for you to speak at Podcast West. What do you think?
Ooh, is that here in Denver?
It's the thing we're putting together. We'll offline it, but you asked me about it on LinkedIn, I think. So we'll connect.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else have any comment before we have We have several speakers coming up and questions. So before we move on, does anybody else have anything to add to this conversation? We can always come back to it later, of course.
I was just going to say I've produced 2 shows or 2 podcasts and video, and it's pretty intensive with 5 cameras. But where I found a huge asset is the marketing, is the sponsorships. So, for example, I wouldn't have Jack's sponsorship. No way that Lone Star Dry Goods would have signed up for a sponsorship if it was audio only. But that's kind of my take on it. I'm really biased towards the video because that's my background. But with this new show I'm launching in November, the video element is huge on it. I don't think I would be able to get the traction I'm getting with these sponsors without the video element for what it's worth. And that's taking apart 5-minute segments and bringing it across all social media platforms. So that's my take on it. It's really the marketing and sponsorship.
One of the unique things that you have going for you, though, is you're working with celebrities, and I think that brings an exception to the rule about repurposing content, because you're dealing with people that people recognize, and that I think it's kind of a big exception, knowing that you want to walk that out as much as possible and get as much out of whatever guest, high profile guest that you're going to have on the show. I can see that. So doing those segments and pulling that out, I think is the right move for you. I don't necessarily think it would be the right move for every person listening, but definitely it's good that you're doing that.
Interesting point, because I've had debates with Jack about, he's like, man, let's not do some video. I was like, man, no, it's either, for me, in my opinion, it's like, it's all or nothing. And we're still doing it on video. We're taking some time off now because it's recording. But my point is that you're right. And it's, I've had some heated debates with Jack recently about possibly just doing audio only. But at this point, we're too far in on the video side. So I appreciate your feedback.
James, you requested to speak. Do you have something to throw in here?
Yeah, I was just going to throw in a couple of things. I was in a taxi the other day going to the airport, which is seemingly all that I'm doing at the moment. And the taxi driver was listening to YouTube on his on the speakers. And I suspect that that's actually something that happens quite a lot, is people using YouTube as a audio source to listen to the kind of content that they want to. I've been doing much the same as Tanner in terms of automated sticking the Pod News podcast onto YouTube. Now, if you were looking at this in terms of a new platform, then my numbers are pretty dismal. They're about 13, 15, 20 plays per episode. But on the other side, if you were looking at it as a different podcast app, which is, I think, the right way to have a look at it, then actually 20 plays is pretty good. It puts it in, it puts it in something like 7th or 8th place in terms of podcast apps. And that's not a bad thing, I don't think. So I think it's worthwhile doing something which is completely automatic if you can get away with it. And who knows, you'll get more people consuming your content in that way as well. And the final thing I would just say is, I think video works for some podcasts, but not for other podcasts. If you look at, a talking head, then that's relatively easy to do in terms of video. If you're looking in terms of an interview, then that's relatively easy to do in terms of video. But if you're looking at audio fiction and you want to make a video version of audio fiction, then that, my friends, is called a movie. And that is relatively expensive to end up doing. So I think it's easy for us to say, all podcasts should be, full motion video and blah, blah, blah. It simply doesn't work for a lot of the videos, a lot of the podcasts, that are out there. And I think we should just bear that in mind as well.
That's actually a really interesting way of looking at it as if it's a podcast player, which is makes me feel weird just as someone who's been making podcasts for a while. But I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because in that way it performs just as well as probably Google Podcasts for my podcast.
Castro.
Yeah, Castro or any of the other platforms. It's a pretty good way of looking at it, and I think it might even reinforce the idea, that the same way that we don't spend an inordinate amount of time or effort marketing for Castbox, I'm just naming one, that we wouldn't do the same thing for YouTube. That we put the most of our marketing efforts are to Apple and Spotify, and I guess to for whatever reason, whatever app seems to be performing the best for us.
One piece of anecdotal information is about once every month or two, I'll get a submission to True Crimes specifically for Indie Drop-In, where it's a quote unquote podcast that does not have an RSS feed. It's only on YouTube. Of course, I have to decline it because I promote podcasts, but it's just interesting. Like, they consider themselves a podcaster. They make YouTube podcasts, and they found my website and, wanted me to feature them. So, yeah, it just, I don't know if that helps or hurts, but just an interesting fact.
Podcasting Power Hour is part of Indie Drop-In Network. If you are a podcaster looking to grow your listeners, check out IndieDropIn.com. Indie Drop-In is always free, and we have opportunities right now for comedy, true crime, scary, and paranormal podcasts. Just go to IndieDropIn.com to learn more.
I know Gary's been up and on here as a speaker, so before we move on to any other thing, I do want to give whoever else the opportunity to speak on this video topic. Go ahead, Bromigos. I know that you posted in the you and Pixie as well, and several other people have been sharing great examples of how to use the video feature.
Yeah, so as maybe some of you who've maybe heard me speak in here in the past, you'll know that I have two podcasts, and this one I think particularly would benefit greatly from video. Just as you can see in the example I put in the comments, like, look at me hysterically laughing. Like, you can tell, like, I guess there's a sense of some sort of feeling that a viewer or a listener would get when you actually see the hosts and you see them having this hysterical conversation and this reaction that I'm having to it. And, like, to me, I feel like there's a sense of personability with it, in my opinion. My question about the video would be how to actually format it. I've had some conversations with all of the three other of the hosts of this podcast, and I've kind of given them examples of what I've seen in terms of video. Like, as an example, I'm not sure if any of you follow the fitness personality Robert Frank, but he has a podcast that's strictly on Patreon. And the way he sets up his video podcast for YouTube is that he'll have separate cameras for each individual person on the show with, like, the way the overlay is. It's like a certain look to it that it's very clean, it's very individualized to the person. And then, there's been the discussion of, do we just have one camera recording us and all of us are just sitting there? Does that really get the same effect? Does it feel a little bit more cluttered? And will any of us even show up fully in the video itself? Like, those are just some of the things I've been thinking about. And I was wondering what your approach to, say, something like that would be. Do you prefer, like, the individual camera idea? Or do you prefer, like, having, like, the full picture of the group and just kind of going from there? I think either way, the content will still be there. It's just a matter of how to, what's the word I'm looking for, present it.
I have an answer for this, but I need to remember a few names and resources before I go. So if anybody else wants to jump in.
Yeah, the one thing I did, this was probably a year ago, is I looked at Joe Rogan's, I tried to find the earliest version of Joe Rogan's video, and it was hideous. You could barely see him. It was so dark. It was just, you couldn't, like, his co-hosts or whoever weren't even on screen. It was like they couldn't figure out how to put the camera in a place where everybody could be on screen. There was just this voice off to the side. So there is a certain part of it. I just did an episode that said it doesn't need to be perfect. I think it also doesn't need to be embarrassing. So I mean, to me, if you just did one shot where everybody's in it, is it as good as if you have, closer images where you have camera switching and things like that? No, that kind of keeps people awake in a way that every now and then the screen actually changes. But if that's all you got, it's not embarrassing. Start where you're at and go from there.
I think maybe the cheapest, easiest way to get a little bit of the camera switching. Well, let me start with this. Are you all in the same place or are you all remote from one another?
So we have the benefit of using a broadcasting school that we all went to earlier in the year that has a studio.
So you're all in the same room.
Yes, we all are in the same room, and we kind of hope to keep it that way. We actually, each of us have actually done our best to purchase equipment, say like a Rodecaster or something, and a couple of other like mics and such, where we can continue to do that when we don't have to travel 45 minutes to an hour to that particular studio. So, we're trying to we have equipment to where, the audio will still sound good. It's just a matter of because we believe that like I said before, that we believe the video is going to help maybe kickstart us to a different level, because I think that the content will be, what's the word I'm looking for?
More engaging?
Engaging, accentuated, whatever word you'd like to use that would start with an E or an A, but it would be a lot better, I guess, in so simple terms.
So first, to anyone who's listening, whose answer to that wouldn't be we're all in the same room, we're all remote. I know that Riverside does it. I'm fairly certain that Squadcast does it. But they do have this magic studio, at least Riverside does, where everybody's on their own cameras, but they'll give you a composite video at the end that will switch the feed automatically based on who's speaking. And that can be a cheap, easy way to get it done if you're all remote from one another.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned that, Tanner. We actually tried out Riverside today, and we did not like it at all. We don't like some of the things that were going on. I particularly prefer StreamYard, just because anytime I've been a guest on a show that uses it, there's never been any issues.
Yeah,
and
StreamYard's a good platform.
Riverside, it was a mess today.
StreamYard used to kind of suck, and then they got independent tracks and local recording, and I think that they've become a much better platform in just the last 12 months, probably. My suggestion was going to be, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a solution that is not necessarily cheap. I think it's about $100 a month, but it's called Switcher Studio. Are you familiar?
I haven't heard of that, actually.
So Switcher Studio will, if you guys all have iPhones or iPads, it will take all of those devices, put them on the Wi-Fi, and turn them into a linked camera system. And then you can run a live broadcast production in real time. You can have somebody running an iPad to handle the transitions and actually build the video in real time. And then when it's lower thirds, transitions between sections, camera switching, all that stuff, you can have one person producing it from the iPad, have all the iPhones in camera mounts, and they can be your 3 positions or whatever it is. And you can, by the time you're done, if the person on the iPad is pretty skilled at it, which they'll get over, a few times they've given it a shot, you can create a pretty nice looking finished video that can be in 4K, of course, because iPhones will shoot in that. iPads, I'm not sure if they will, but I think the newer ones will. And you wind up with something that looks very polished and pretty sexy at the end. For $100 a month, it requires you have all those separate eye devices, iPads and iPhones, but it's a pretty slick solution that I've used in the past that I've really enjoyed.
And you said it's a Switcher Studio?
Yeah, switcherstudio.com.
Switcher Studio. Well, thank you for that. That's actually a good little tip that I just wrote down there, just to make sure I got the thing right.
We've covered that one in detail. I do want to make sure we get to the people that have requested to speak here. They might have other questions or regarding a different topic. I'm not sure. So I'm going to do this. If you have any questions about video, go ahead and speak up now before we move on. All right, David, you are up first. Thank you for being patient and waiting. And what you got this week?
Yeah, so I actually thought of another question that I think would be even better than the one I had mentioned earlier. So, and I had actually mentioned this in Tanner's Discord too, but I feel like this might be a good place to pose the question.
And on my LinkedIn. God, give me a minute.
But basically the question is, what's a good way to research underserved niches in podcasting?
Well, I guess I should answer it. I should answer it now, Dave.
I just want him to get his $5.40 worth is all.
Oh man, but this prevents everyone else from subscribing to my premium feed. You're taking money off the kids I don't have's tables or something. So there's no real great way to, you can't automate it. This is so for anybody, probably everybody in here is not clued into what Dave is getting at. Something that I say frequently is, if you want to get into the podcasting space, it's extremely flooded, which makes it very noisy, which means that paid promotion of some kind at some point, probably rather quickly, is going to come, and you're going to need to invest some dollars. And one of the ways to kind of fight off how fast that necessity happens is to identify a niche which is either underserved or not served at all. And so Dave's question is, how can you find those underserved niches? So you're going to start with your own competency. You've got to know what you're competent as a talent and a brain to talk about. So you probably wouldn't want to start a movie podcast because there's a lot of movie podcasts, but there's probably something you could do to serve the movie-loving community in a way that they are not being served, or, and this is more likely, there might be a certain subgenre of film that you could focus on that isn't currently being focused on. I don't have a great example of that, but the only way you would be able to discover it is to listen to, frankly, a lot of shows to see, A, what's being spoken about and what isn't, and make a notation of what isn't being spoken about. Considering the demographics that these shows maybe are creating, to trying to find out, make an educated guess, look at their followers on Twitter, look at places where you can actually see their followers, see, what color, creed, religion the people are that they're serving as much as you can, which is, kind of hard to do, but you can still give it a shot. And then you want to find out what's not being discussed at all. You want to find out the kind of people who aren't being served and the kind of content that's not being served. And if there's a Venn diagram of people who aren't being served and a certain kind of content that's not being served, where those two cross, that's really where you should create your podcast. And a lot of podcasters, I think, have a hard time thinking about it like that, because I did this, and I'm sure Jeff did it, and Greg, and everybody does this. They come to podcasting, they're like, I'm going to create on the thing that I'm passionate about, which used to be okay, because believe it or not, I think in 2014, 2015, you can still find these numbers on Pew Research, if I'm not mistaken. There were like 40,000 podcasts. Can you imagine there ever having been 40,000 podcasts, and now there's 5 million on Spotify and almost 2.5 million on Apple Podcasts, and there's crossover there and such. But now if you just come to it with your passion, well, everybody else probably got that passion too. You got to be a lot more strategic about it. And the answer is, you got to put in some legwork. You got to find who's not being served, how the content is currently being delivered, and how you could deliver it differently, and what that content is, and the content that's there and the content that isn't. And that's where you want to create, because that's going to mean that you're first to market in a way, or you're early to market in a way. And that's always a benefit, because there will be an existing, I would say clientele, but we say audience here, that is looking for that and not finding it. And honestly, I think it's one of the only ways that podcasting as a genre, just broadly, is able to grow, because I think we're at like 40% or some 40-50% of Americans listen to a podcast at least monthly. And I think that the reason that has kind of stagnated in the last few years, it's not because of COVID. It actually bumped a little bit in COVID and then kind of went down again after COVID kind of subsided. I think it's because we might be at like full capacity of like the 40% to 50% of Americans who are listening. They're being served, but that other 40%, that other 30% that might come in, they're not finding the content they want. And I think if you're going to be successful with a new podcast, you got to find the content that's not being created and start creating it, and hope that it overlaps with something that you're competent in so that you can do a good job of it.
James, I don't know if you're.
So it was helpful.
Yeah, James, I don't know if you remember, there was some study that you had reported on about why people don't listen to podcasts. And it was something like they didn't know why they should. Like they couldn't.
That's great. I wish I'd seen that one.
It was something along the lines of that. I do know, I always like to point out, I'm at podcastindex.org. And yeah, there's 4 million podcasts, but only 343,000 have put out an episode in the last 30 days. And it's even few. Well, actually, how is that? 343 episodes in 30 days, but 477,090. Oh, that's true, because you got more time. That makes sense. But I remember James reporting on something, and like the reason when they ask people, why don't you listen to podcasts, they're kind of like, why should I? And I'm not sure anybody can answer that question. It was something similar to that. But I know the thing when you're talking about don't follow your passion, I kind of get that. But I also know I just watched an hour-long interview with Ozzy.
Wait. For clarity, I'm not saying don't follow your passion. I'm saying don't follow your passion alone. There has to be more to your thought process of what you're creating than just the passion, or else you're going to jump into a pool that's already overflowing.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, because I know I was watching this thing on Ozzy Osbourne, and half the reason his first solo album was so great is when he was in Black Sabbath, they would come in and write music, and he would have to scream over it because it wasn't in his key. And they're like, well, that's the riff. And when he got his own band, the guitar player said, wait a minute, what's your range? And let's write music that fits your range. So what the hell does that have to do with podcasting? Figure out what you are good at, what you want to do, and what you want to talk about, and then build on that. So if you're not a funny person, then don't try to be funny. And if you're, just play to your strengths, I think that's going to help at least.
I would certainly agree with that, and I think do something that you're obsessed about is usually a good plan as well. The data that you were talking about was way back in 2018. What a memory you have, Dave! But this was Public Radio's tech survey from back then. So these were public radio fans, and the top reasons why they don't listen to podcasts. I don't know how. Said 27% of them. And they are all mostly old people who are perfectly happy with their radio. I don't know how, 27% of people, but I'm just not interested. 55%, I'm just not interested. So, my suspicion is that's probably the same even if you were to ask people today, if they're perfectly happy with getting news from their radio or getting information from their radio, then I'm just not interested is still a bit of an issue for quite a lot of folks. So, yeah.
Some great information there. It's really an eye-opener for where podcasting is at, but also where it could potentially be. I'm trying to figure out who was next here. Bro Migos, did you have anything else that you're going to ask besides just the video aspect?
No, I'm good. You pretty much answered and everything that I pretty much had. So if you need to move me out to give someone else room, that's totally fine on my end.
I appreciate you coming up and sharing your opinion and sharing that. Gary, I think you were next.
Yeah, I just want to talk about what you guys are talking about with video. If you design your show from the get-go so that it can be repurposed for video, I think it can work really well. That's what I did with my show, is that I from day one, I always intended that I was going to convert all my episodes to YouTube videos. It's just not a priority because it's an audio first show, but I have all the scripts, I have all the audio, and I've always intended for it. There's lots of very successful YouTube channels that are educational channels that do nothing but put B-roll footage and Ken Burns effect images over a voiceover. And so I can easily convert all my stuff to that. And that's been the intent from day one. And likewise, I've been I shouldn't say real successful, but reasonably successful on TikTok. Just repurposing, I do a 30-second cold open for my show. And that's what I've been doing on TikTok. And I have almost 12,000 followers now. And I have a tracking URL, And I've gotten a fair number of subscribers off of TikTok. And it kind of comes in waves depending on the popularity of the video. But that works really well also. But I don't think I'll ever make YouTube or TikTok a priority. Just the way the money works, it's always going to be in my interest to put the podcast and the audio first, and to try to use any other platform as a means of feeding that.
Great. Greg, you have anything to throw in here?
No, I was just nodding my head that you couldn't see to what Gary was saying. I put 3 or 4 examples of that in the chat. I just went out and found I knew of a couple, but there's a show I posted that has like 800,000 followers and then 151,000 followers, and they're monetized and, making money, but also I'm sure, they're selling their merch. They're doing their, if they have sponsorships, I'm sure they're selling, I'll just say mattresses for lack of a better idea, but, they're getting views. I mean, 5, 6, 7, 10,000 views. One of them had like 2.6 million views on, I'm just looking at it right here on my screen from the EWU crew. I put it in the chat, but 2.6 million views. And it's just essentially B-roll. It's like crime footage, B-roll, static images on top of their podcast. So it can be done. I don't know if you can plan it though. Like these seem like flukes.
Yeah, that whole X Factor thing, right?
Well, I mean, that was the intent. And, given I have scripts for all of my episodes, and the scripts are all published as blog posts, which have dramatically increased the traffic to my website. I can always re-record the scripts if I want. I can make some small changes if I need to tweak it a little bit for YouTube. I have that flexibility. So even if I don't want to just take the raw audio and put it into YouTube, I can always make, updates. And there's a couple episodes where I'm going to want to make updates simply because things have changed, and I'll have to do that anyhow. But the point is, it'll be very trivial for me to do. But I designed it that way from scratch. And the plan is, I should be making a lot more next year, that I'll be able to finally start funding someone to help me on the video end of things. And I'll be able to start growing a team that will actually be able to make videos and start doing something on YouTube.
Yeah, a team would really help that. I had editors for my stuff for a while, and it just, it's expensive though. Like those people are skilled and they make a lot of money.
Yeah, but that's the way I put it off, and I'm putting audio first. And another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is YouTube, there's a tendency to be attracted to big, gaudy public numbers. So, their websites, email newsletters, and podcasts, the numbers aren't really public. But if you have a ton of Instagram followers or YouTube subscribers, that's a big public number. And if you have that big number, people think it's a success. But in reality, I think a moderately successful podcast should be able to make more money than even more successful YouTube channel, just because of the economics of how it works. Jordan Harbinger has talked about it, that if you look at the CPM rates and what you can get per, 1,000 views on YouTube versus say 1,000 downloads on a podcast, you can make way more on a podcast. And I think people tend to get, they see the attraction of this algorithm where you can build an audience without really having to do any work or make an investment, and they find it attractive. But the upside isn't probably as great, and that algorithm can hurt you just as much as help you. So that's, no matter what I do in video, audio is always going to take priority because I own it.
All right. Got a few more minutes here. We have a few more people that have jumped up. You have something to throw in here, Ed?
Hi. So, sorry I missed most of the conversation. I had to take a phone call. But I would just, in terms of pivoting to video, I would look back to the entertainment journalism pivot to video from 5 years ago that was mostly based off of lies and deceit by Facebook and YouTube and other companies that were heavily promoting a pivot to video. It destroyed a lot of websites and a lot of my personal friends' livelihoods. And it just seems to me that we're heading towards another abyss with trying to pivot podcasts to videos. I'm very worried just because I've already seen what an incorrect pivot has done to an industry. So just for me, it's something that I am very worried about for the future of podcasting.
Thank you.
I could also see it.
Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Well, I could also just see it boosting burnout numbers, because if everybody thinks, well, I have to do audio and video, they're already half burned out doing audio, and they think, well, this is the missing piece. I need to do video, and then they do video, and it's 12 more hours, and they get 14 views, and they're just going to throw up their hands and go, screw it, this doesn't work.
It's never the missing
podcasting
piece.
was hard. If you thought podcasting was hard, wait until you try vlogging.
Yeah. So I that's for the person that's like, again, they're just like, well, I've got to try something. I haven't asked anybody for honest feedback, but I bet video is the the magic bullet that's going to come through here. So, and they're just going to do it because they want to grow their audience. And again, the other thing is they might actually be growing their YouTube channel, but it's not growing their downloads. I think it was James that mentioned the large Instagram people. I've fielded those emails at Libsyn where they're like, hey, these numbers can't be right. I have insert very large number of Instagram followers and I'm only getting, and the number they quote is actually really good for podcasting, but it's, a small fragment of their Instagram audience. So I think in many of these different platforms, they like you on Instagram because they love Instagram, and they love you on YouTube because they love YouTube. But getting them to actually listen on a different format on a different app is maybe harder than we think it is.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I wanted to touch on something that another guest kind of brought up very briefly, which is like social media numbers and all that kind of thing that people are all trying to, attain. About a year and a half or 2 years ago, I started thinking very deeply about what is the point of social media, right? Because I've done this long enough to kind of observe the role of social media in my business and in engagement and things like that. And I hate to say this, but I think most people could have a really great experience growing whatever it is they're trying to grow. In the case of this conversation, it's probably podcast downloads or subscribers or whatever the goal is, with probably a much lower social media number than they think. I think when I observe what people are doing online, there's a lot of shiny object syndrome and not really a lot of strategy. Like, people don't understand that you don't need 100,000 people following you on Twitter. Like, I think a lot of us spend way too much time on Twitter, myself included, but I have fun on Twitter, but I don't have like a hard and fast, strategy with Twitter anymore, because honestly, it's a distraction. Most of us are way too distracted by some of the things that really aren't going to move the downloads, move our goals forward, right? So I think one thing I would say, and to add to this conversation, is at the end of the day, what the hell is your strategy? Like, what's your goal? What's your strategy? So if your goal is downloads, then how you make that happen, whether it's with your video, supplemental video, or calls to action, like, have the strategy versus like this kind of whimsical, like trying to figure it all out. In creating content and trying to figure out what's the right fit for you, like, there's a percentage of whimsy, but I think many people are really missing out on having a really well thought out strategy. And that's where and they don't recognize that they don't have a well thought out strategy. They're like, I've got this podcast, and I see it all the time in the podcast movement group. Actually, it's a massive group, all these podcasters, and they're like, well, I started my podcast last week and I got 20 downloads. Is that enough? And I'm like, bro, you only did it for a week. Like, let's see if you can even get the 10 episodes. Like, is that even going to happen for you? And then there are other people who are like, well, I'm on Twitter every week and I've got all these, followers. I'm like, so what? Does that make you money? Like, is that even like, is that important? So like for me, I'm on social media, but I'm looking for opportunities for other people because that makes sense because I believe in the law of reciprocity. I'm trying to make money and I'm trying to get downloads with the podcast specifically. So I have a very specific strategy that I'm working versus vibes. And I wish people would think about like, what the hell is your strategy? So it is right now, it is in mid-September. Podcast movement evolutions is, in March or whatever, and Podthon. And like, we've got all these things happening, 6, 7, 8 months from now that we can work towards. What's the strategy? Because I think, I just feel like a lot of people just kind of move on vibes and feelings. Like 80% vibes and feelings and 20% strategy. And I wish people would flip that. So it's 80% strategy and then 20% vibes and feelings, because I think most people would get a lot better results with their business. And I'm going to give an example. The other week I'm on Twitter, right? Like this, hopefully this makes sense. But the other week,
this terrible place, Twitter.
So the other week I'm on Twitter and I see that there's a company looking to partner with people. They don't say in what way, by the way. So they're just like, hey, we're looking to partner with people. And I was like, oh, hey, now that could be a good partner for me. And they had many people reach out to them. And I'm like, hey, I think I could be a good partner. Long story short, they give me the email. I send, my details. I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be camping for the week. I'll come back. I'll be gone. So literally I hit it and quit it. I was like, I'm here. I'm interested. Bye. Because I'm going to be offline. I come back. They're like, cool. We'll give you the money that you asked for. And in case you guys are wondering, and I actually have to raise my rates. I asked for $3,000 for 5 episodes and they said, yes. I literally came back. I got paid. We're good. I just think people don't have a strategy and they think too hard and they're way too meta about like, ask the questions, understand what you're trying to do and get it done. That's all I got to say.
Okay. So first of all, why don't we have an amen emoji reaction? It's upsetting that we don't. Also, like, Michelle, I like you even more than I already did from the other times you've been in here. You are able somehow to tell podcasters they need to make fucking money and stop being like, oh, but my art. Like, you're able to say that and not get castrated.
But I come from personal finance space, and I think that is the best thing ever, because personal finance content creators, I think I feel like the genesis of what I see at podcasting right now is what happened with personal finance content creators 10 years ago. So like when I started in 2012, sharing my story, like the goal was not to make money. It was, how can I share this shitty space that I'm in, this shitty place? And no, it was a horrible situation. And my goal was to like, if I could inspire another person or let them know that they aren't alone, that was it. But then there's a point where you're like, this is a lot of freaking work, and I want to pursue this, but I can't do it for free. Right. And that's a crossroads. For some people, they're not going to ever want to monetize their work. They must have money from other things. That's great. I like working for myself, so I need to make this make sense for me. Literally, sense, CENTS, SENSE. Like, it has to make sense both ways. And so I am expensive now. My time is money, and I feel very comfortable with that. But in the beginning, that was never how I approached it. But there is a point where it's like, if an episode that's well crafted and well thought out and there's strategy behind it and whatever, takes me 5 hours to do from start to finish with interviews and editing, whatever, I need to get paid for that time. So there just was a point where I was just like, I have to get paid for that.
I do want to make sure before we wrap up here, I know that Clint's been waiting patiently, and I appreciate it, Clint.
Oh, hey guys, thank you for having me up, and I'll save my question for another episode. But I want to comment on that because I 100% believe on the strategy aspect, and I think people aren't seeing their social media path as a way to monetization like it can be. For me personally, at this stage, my podcast, from a monetization perspective, I don't think I'm there. And from a social media perspective, I'm able to monetize my social media following much more than I am my podcast. And that's passively. So if there was active movement to do it, then I think it would be there. For me, strategically, I just see every one of these social media platforms, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, as a means to drive traffic to the podcast. And if there is time, maybe a quick question, or it might not be quick, so you guys can let me know if you need to defer it, is whether anyone's gone through a successful rebrand of their podcast. I'm finally starting to get traction, but the intention is to rebrand to a new name for the podcast, my website, etc., and wondering whether anyone's done that successfully.
Tanner?
Well, I mean, I think there's two ways to transition. One is, thoughtfully and carefully, and the other way is the way I did it, which I don't think is really best advised. I just said, I'm going to transition and it's done now. Good luck. I don't have great advice on that. I'm somebody who doesn't fret decisions like that. I just kind of make the choice to do it. So I think somebody else would be much better to weigh in here.
That's the way you do it for everything. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah, I don't waste time with decisions. Decisions stop you from moving shit forward.
It's not hard to rebrand. You just go into your media host, you change your artwork, you change your description. You might need to change your website. But my first podcast, I rebranded twice because I kept picking really bad names. And by the time I picked the third one, I even had somebody write a theme song for it, thinking that would somehow pump life into not only the podcast, but into me. But in the end, I was just tired of the subject. But it's just think of it like Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC. I mean, it's that's a rebrand.
That's the analogy.
That's the only one I can think of. Pabst Blue Ribbon to PBR, but that's not good.
Well, Dave Tanner went extreme, though. He rebranded his to Podcasting Sucks to Good Morning Podcasters, where he changed the vibe and everything.
Yeah,
that's because everybody was sad. They were like, it's too aggressive and mean, and I was trying to manage my image. People were sad.
No one said that, Tanner. Stop it.
One person said it. Sorry, go ahead.
The one subscriber. That's why I did only one subscriber.
No, it's one person that you respected made a comment and you couldn't handle it.
Exactly.
That's not true. What kind of little bitch do you think I am that would be how I would move forward with that? Come on. Don't be stupid.
I just described it. I just said it. What kind I thought. That's exactly.
You asked, everybody said no.
No, I asked and more people said yes than said no.
No, that's not true.
It is true.
Anyway, Ed, let's go to
okay. All right.
Let's go to Ed. Ed successfully changed his podcast name for the better. So let's hear his story real quick.
He's going to be brown nosing all over Tanner here. So here we go.
Well, no, it's just that Jeff and Tanner and several other people woke me up to the fact that I was being stubborn as hell about the name of my podcast, which I was using 20 years of an established name. But the podcast wasn't getting any traction because the Film Jerk podcast didn't really tell you what the podcast was about. So I finally had to come kicking and screaming, or be dragged kicking and screaming to the thought of a new name. And then I used Twitter and the help of my friends here to kind of pick a new name and go in a new direction. And the podcast has definitely grown steadily since then. I hit my biggest numbers last month, and it's continuing to grow. Even though I've only done one episode in the last 2 months, it's continuing to grow because now the 80s Movie Podcast, it tells you exactly what you're getting. So I think sometimes we just overthink things instead of going for the most obvious route, because we don't want to seem like we're cheating or something, when it's just like, just get to the point. Just make your move. And if your friends are all telling you to get off your ass and make a move, get off your ass and make a move. Period. Just do it.
Ed, why only one episode in the last 2 months? What have you been doing? Get to work.
This past weekend I celebrated my 20th anniversary.
I didn't want to actually know.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't want to actually know.
And
I love how
before that,
disingenuous. I love how
actually
disingenuous Greg is.
Oh,
He just wants to know, but he doesn't want to know.
No,
Greg
I just
is
want
my biggest frenemy on Twitter. So
I just wanted to be hostile about him not working on this podcast after all this hard work of rebranding.
I have been working. I've been actually doing a month and a half of research for my next season, which I'm going to be premiering in about 3 weeks. I just, instead of just winging it like I freaking do all the time, I want to have an actual season where it's all set up and I've done the research ahead of time and I don't have to rush to go episode to episode to episode, because it gets very tiring very quickly. I'm trying something different.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
You, Greg?
We've talked about this, and I think it's an absolutely awesome idea. But we went the whole show without me giving you crap, so I had to get it in there.
Well, I was gone most of this show, so you couldn't give me crap. Or if you did, I wouldn't have heard it.
I may have broke what I said here, my promise, but Robin requested to speak, and I decided to allow it. So the podcasting power hour will go on a little bit longer as usual, which is all right.
Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This is my first time in here, and I consider myself a new podcaster, even though my podcast is going to celebrate its 1-year birthday in next month. I'm super excited about that. I am lucky enough to have a very niche audience, and I know who my people are, and I have the know, like, and trust factor. I'm not even sure. I'm so new at this, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But I think it's going well, and I don't know if my numbers say that it's going well. But I'm averaging almost 2,000 downloads a week. It's a weekly podcast, and I just broke 63,000 in 10 or 11 months. But I'm not monetized, and I don't know how to do that, and I don't know where to start, and blah, blah, blah. So this is like a freaking room full of brainiacs, and I thought I would raise my hand. Thank you.
What's up, Robin, my friend?
Hi, Tanner.
How are you?
Good. How are you? It's been a while.
It's doing really good. Yeah, it's been a while. So a couple of answers there. The easiest way is probably through, well, what's your ultimate goal here? Do you remind me what your podcast is about? I think I remember what it is, but for everybody else.
Sure. The name of my podcast is called Coming Out Late, and it is predominantly for women, but men listen too, and I get really nice emails from men. And it's really people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who are coming out of the closet later in life. And yeah, the response has been crazy. I also have like 3 support groups that I run in Zoom. I've been working for nothing for almost a year, and I need to make income because I lost my alimony, so I'm making no money.
How many people are in that support group?
I get I do 3 of them. I get 25 women every week. So 75 women a week with the 3 groups. I also have 2 Facebook groups. Yeah, so I mean, I have good following. I do a speaker summit quarterly. There's just a lot of potential there too that I need.
That's amazing engagement.
Yeah, it's crazy high amounts of people to be in a weekly. That's really cool, especially since you've been around for less than a year. Your podcast is not unlike mine. I've listened to it in tone, and what I'm doing. Sorry, not my podcast about podcasting. My philosophy podcast, and what I've started to do is not dissimilar from what you've done. First of all, I wrote a book to go with the podcast, which I have found to be a really effective. I probably sell like 2 copies a day, so it's not making a lot of money, but I have found it to be an effective funnel for people to find the podcast. And I run a podcast that has ads in it, programmatic ads, sometimes host read. And my hosting provider helps me to do that without me having to do much. I just say, hey, programmatic ads on for me. And they say, sure. How many do you want? And do you want them in the pre-roll, in the middle, or at the end? And I answer those questions. And I use those ads as a small form of income, but also as a little bit of an agitator. And I sell a premium feed that doesn't have the ads. And one of the options within the premium feed, one of the things you get is you get the ability to join a general Discord of all the other listeners. But there's a particular tier of support that you can join a monthly discussion about Stoicism. And that costs $1,200 a year. And there are already, I think, 8 people in it. And I just launched it 2 weeks ago, probably. So I think you already have all that in place. I think you just need to start charging for it. And I'd actually like if Michelle could jump in on that, because I feel like Michelle's biting her tongue because she wants to explode at everything you just said because you've already got a business.
Yeah, it's been really so freaking gratifying. I mean, so gratifying.
I think it's amazing what you're doing. You have all the components there. I think what I would say is, what do you feel comfortable with? So I think figuring that out will make whatever sales strategy that you're going to deploy easier to do. So to me, I thought immediately a membership model would be easier.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning towards.
I would highly recommend that, because you could charge less, but you could build up that income that's predictable, you know? And so I think that could be a wonderful way to monetize what you're doing. But I would definitely also say, are you getting them on an email list, just as a side note?
Well, I am collecting emails through Facebook. Like I have about 3,000 people.
Girl, make that money. Oh my God.
Yeah, right?
I don't know how to.
Yeah.
Like that's,
I don't know if Michelle will, but if Michelle won't, I will. I'll give you a little time this week or next if you want.
Thanks. Yeah, I honestly don't know how to do it. Like, I have a Miller Lite account, and I've got like almost 3,000 names on an email list, but I don't know how to merge them. And I am a Circle.so member now.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love Circle. And that's
that's
where I'm going to do.
That's your membership site.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Circle or Heartbeat. Yeah, that's I'm like so excited for you. I think it's just having the confidence to take a risk.
I feel like
the tech is easy. Tech's easy. I think because you could go on YouTube and watch how it works.
Yeah.
So the tech is easy.
You just need some.
Okay.
All you need is a little bit of hand holding. You've already got this.
Yeah, I feel that.
That's all you need.
And then I'll take off. I don't have to hold your hand forever.
Well, let's talk this week or next. You know my email, I think, Tanner helps. Just send me an email and we'll figure something out.
Thank you. Thanks. I just really want to, I need to pay the bills.
Yeah. And Robin, I mean, there was a time when Uber was new and we're like, you got to do what app, huh? And we figured that out. We figured out
that's true. Good point.
It's you've conquered technology before. It's just, you just got it. You'll be out of your comfort zone for a little bit, and then you'll watch a couple of YouTube videos and go, "Oh, I got it."
Yeah. Okay.
And I run, just as a side note, I run a Substack and a project called Podcasters Getting Paid. Mm-hmm. So there's a free option if you want to just see like the free content, and I also share a lot of stuff on Twitter and just FYI. And I do a Twitter space about monetizing as well.
Okay.
So it may not necessarily answer your question about memberships because I have a strategy, but it might give you ideas. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I also want to do a newsletter because I really love to write and I love to curate content. And
you should be doing a newsletter because you have 3,000 people on your freaking email list. So that
3,000.
No, that's what I was saying. 3,000. You should be doing I think people overthink newsletter. Like if you have 3,000 people, 100 people, whatever, in your mailer light, just start sending them emails. That's a newsletter. That's simple.
Yeah.
So,
hey, it's me, Robin. How you doing? Just give him one thing every week. It doesn't even. Like she said, doesn't have to be a newsletter. You could call it a publication. It could just be, hey, saw this news article, thought it was really relevant to everybody. I got something out of it. Go give it a read. You could be something just like that, and they love that. It's just some utility in their inbox.
Yeah,
I love it. And this is a weird thing to tell people, but I write romance novels.
Oh, cool.
My most responsive email list is my romance list. And you know what I do? It's exactly what he just described. I have a pen name. So I describe like what my week was like, what's going on. I'll share a link to a book. Like don't overthink it. It's super easy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds great. And I didn't see who let me speak or let me talk. And thank you so much. Maybe it was Jeff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
The pleasure was all ours. You certainly good to have you, and
thanks.
Hopefully you can come back every week. And because you definitely did.
And it brought us full circle, because that's how you carve out a niche aligned with your passion.
Yeah. I love my people. I do. I love what I'm doing.
Because you could have gone really broad, right, with your show. You just decided that you wanted to address a specific area that you saw a need in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what works.
Yep. True. I love it.
All right, Jeff, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, no, we'll go through some closing thoughts real quick, but everything we just discussed, and Michelle actually tweeted it earlier. I think it's important that whether it is the process of video or all the monetizing we've been talking about in the niche, I think it's important not to make it too complicated to the point you're tempted to quit at it. So it's been a great discussion this evening. You just have to do what will work for you and be real going into it before you do something that's going to take up a significant amount of your time and resources. Greg, what do you have?
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, take a look at Jeff's Twitter, my Twitter, Tanner's social media, all the folks up here that have some time doing this, and you'll see that we're not tweeting about our last burrito. We're not, we're really using social media to further our goals with our show or whatever it is that we're doing. And you can, just do what the people do that you want to mimic, right? Like you see people, and if you have a bunch of podcasters following you and you follow a bunch of podcasters, you better have a show about podcasting. And that's my final thought.
I tweet about my burritos.
You actually tweet about tacos, which is why I didn't say it.
Gary, do you have anything to throw in here as closing thoughts?
No.
Simple math.
Awesome.
James, what do you got? You got to have something.
I have nothing other than I'm sitting here writing tomorrow's pod news. Megaphone fell over for 2 hours. Who'd have thought it? Again. So if you want to get that, podnews.net. It's free.
Nice plug. Megaphone. Must be a Spotify thing, right, Tanner?
Was it an AWS thing, James, or was it strictly? Oh wait, they're on Azure, aren't they?
Yeah, it was their stuff. Yeah,
I was just trying to blame Spotify in your honor, Tanner. Jim, I would say
it's the future.
Yeah, Jim, I would say do you have anything to add, but I don't know if you even spoke tonight. But thanks for dropping in.
Yeah, I dropped in late, so I wasn't part of the intro, and I'm gonna niche down on this conversation and take 5 minutes and find somebody you want to connect with and send them a direct message and see where it goes.
Tanner, go ahead.
Well, nothing, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I hope I was useful in some way to at least one person. I love doing these on Monday, so see you guys next week. If anybody needs to reach out, my DMs are open, and you're always welcome to email me, tanner@tannerhelps.com.
Follow Tanner for breakfast burritos that aren't, or breakfast tacos that aren't actually breakfast tacos.
Breakfast tacos don't have eggs in them, and please don't, as who you are, Greg, talk to me about what is correct Mexican food. Please don't do that to me.
Breakfast tacos have eggs.
Thank you as always.
Do they have pineapple?
Breakfast tacos have eggs, period.
Don't implicate it, Jim, Ed. Michelle, you've been amazing as usual. What are your closing thoughts?
I have no thoughts.
What's your take on breakfast tacos?
I'm all about the breakfast tacos, and if you're ever in Austin, that's one of the best places I've ever had tacos. That's all I gotta say.
And they have eggs in them. Torchies.
I've never been to Torchies, even though Torchies has been in Denver for like 5 years or whatever.
Yo, my God, saying Torchies or tacos is like, it's like saying Chipotle is Mexican food. Come on, guys, you're better than this.
Oh, delicious.
See, I've never been there on purpose.
Uncle Dave, what do you got? All jokes aside, Dave, always appreciate you dropping in and taking your time to do this.
First of all, standing ovation to Michelle. That was, I'm with Tanner. We need to add an amen emoji. And I would just say, follow your passion is an idea and a general, like that's something you should do. But when we talk about strategies, that's like, oh, I don't know. I mentioned a company in my podcast. Maybe I should copy them on Twitter. That's a strategy. Maybe, there's a difference between follow your passion. Okay, great. Now, how am I going to follow my passion? That's the strategy. That's the action steps. Follow your passion is the game plan. Great. How are we going to implement our plan? So I just thought she said a lot of good things tonight. So thanks for stopping in, and thanks to everybody for coming out.
I think you found a new person on Ask the Podcast, Coach. She may be taking your throne one day, Dave.
Yeah, you should have her on.
Well, anybody can come on that show, even Jeff. I always say that door is open. You can pop in, and I'm still waiting for somebody to pop in and scream Baba Booey and leave, but it's wide open every Saturday. So
he's let me on twice, so anybody can go on.
I've asked him like 10 times and he ignores me. So we're just going to move on.
It's not, there's no ask. It's a link. AskThePodcastCoach.com/join. We'll get you on when I'm on. So just let you know.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right. Last but not least, Ed, what do you have?
Well, I've got a thing where next time Tanner's in Los Angeles, I believe it's January for Outlier, I'm going to meet him. I'm going to bring him a homemade breakfast taco that I make for my wife at least twice a week for breakfast. And
that's it for Ed.
Yeah, it looks like Greg. He loves to cut you off for some unknown reason, Ed. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, ha 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 ha.
You actually broke up, Ed. That wasn't me. I just took the opportunity because the last 2 episodes. You were cut off at the end, and it was hilarious.
Well, I am walking my dogs right now. Can you hear me okay now?
And that's it for Ed. So,
oh, Jesus Christ, guys. Always treated like the redheaded stepchild.
Sorry, Ed. Greg, you're a bad man. Take us home.
Don't forget, you can go to podcastingpowerhour.com to listen to these recordings after the fact. And you might hear some little Easter egg activity if you stay past the outro. So just check that out. Thanks a lot.
We'd be glad to have you stay past the intro, frankly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Breakfast tacos have eggs, period.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Wait till I get a Cedro in here. He's going to rip you all up. I swear to God.
I have the mute button.
I'm still waiting for Tanner to start buymeataco.com.
Yeah, my listeners.
Wait a minute. Buymeataco.com? Is that available? Holy shit, that might be available.
So are all the other domains that I bought that were in your name or your brand.
Yeah, I was wondering how you survived that brand attack, Tanner.
I use Cloudflare for a reason.
I bought them just so you couldn't. All right. No, seriously, though. Thanks to everybody for attending. It's great. The retention and engagement for this one has been particularly awesome. So I appreciate it. And we'll be back next Monday and every Monday, unless it's a holiday or Greg is too old and sick and falls asleep in his recliner. But we'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you for attending Podcasting Power Hour.
Thank you for listening to the Podcasting Power Hour. Everyone is free to participate on Twitter Spaces every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To join, just follow Jeff at podcast_father or Greg at Indie Dropin. If you found this podcast helpful, go into your podcast app and write a quick review. Other podcasters will see it and know this show is worth listening to. Also, I'll put a few links in the show notes for ways you can support the show. I think by now you know we love our coffee. Have a great week.
All right.
Somebody already has buymeataco.com. Damn it.
I need to add like some sort of a thing to my Rodecaster so we can have some exit music.
Sound effects?
Yeah. We could always
there we go.
Yeah, I knew Dave is on the Rodecaster.
Dude, that's so loud. Turn it down. What are you doing?
I can't control volume on it.
Was that applause or rain?
Taco.
Was that applause or rain? What was that supposed to be?
It was like a thunderstorm.
Jesus. Nope. Somebody at 533 Great Parkway got buy me a taco. Son of a gun. .net's available, but we all know that's a second-rate TLD. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody will type their credit card into a .net.
That's right.
Didn't you use a .net forever, Tanner?
No, I always buy the .net if I have the .com, just for brand safety. But
what about buy a podcaster at taco.com?
That's too much. Buy a podcaster named Tanner who lives in Colorado, in Denver specifically, at taco.com. No, I'm not going to do that.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious.
Buy a podcaster.com? What?
Rent a podcaster. Oh, hey, actually, Michelle, could I ask the thing you got hired for? I don't want details, but do you do branded content? Is that what you do?
I do different things. So for this, that's an ad read. That's pre-roll that I described in this conversation. Yeah, and I'm raising my rates, by the way, because I spoke with a friend of mine and I was like, this, we were just chit chatting and she was like, raise those rates again. So that's the other thing. Like, just ask. Like, you'd be surprised what's like companies will pay, but like corporate sponsors pay more than, say, friends of mine who run like a nonprofit. Like the corporates kind of subsidizes that kind of stuff. So, but I have done project, like I did do a brand partnership with Experian last year, and they flew me out to do like a video series about credit. So it just depends. Like there's just different ways to collaborate or do something.
So for everybody's edification here, and you can say you don't want to share this if you don't want to. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I do want to ask. You said 3,000, right? For how? For 4 episodes? Was that did I hear that right?
It was 3,000 for 5 to 7 episodes. I have to decide how many will be in that. I'm doing a segment, and so they're sponsoring that segment.
So at the most, or at the least, that's $428 per episode. Do you, if you were following, I feel like this is a really good thing to say out loud. If you were following the CPM model, you would need a lot of listeners to justify that cost per read. Do you have that many listeners, or is it just that you have killer engagement?
No, I have really good engagement. But here's the aside. So I have a small but mighty podcast, and podcasters getting paid is focused on podcasters getting 10,000 downloads or fewer a month. So that is me. But I'm also really well known in my space. I've won awards for my podcast. I was in the running for Podcast of the Year that I lost to a really good friend. Found out on Friday. So what I'm doing is great branded, great content. And if I ask a partner in, it's very well thought out. And so when you're having like a conversation about, hey, I'd like to work with you. I've been on PBS and MSNBC and Business Insider, and like like I have a lot of street cred that I've built up over the years. And so when you're sharing that kind of stuff in a media kit, like I have almost 1 million downloads on my blog, and so collectively, when you look at everything, it's not a horrible gamble, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing I would say. It's not like I have this small podcast and like 100 followers. it's I have a small but mighty podcast, but I've won awards for it, and I've been, I've collaborated with other brands, and this is what we've done, and I can articulate why I have evergreen content. And so if they put something on my show, and I've been podcasting for 4 years, it's likely that investment will really pay off over time. So
Right.
that's the other part of that equation is longevity as well.
Man, I know that Greg and I absolutely love you after this, because everything you just said is so on the ball with things that Greg and I frequently say. And it's so great that you live in my town. It's so great that we can go have real tacos together.
Denver represent.
Anyway,
Buying the taco, Michelle.
I'm gonna buy Michelle a taco. She's a baller. Okay, so I'm gonna jump you guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. See everybody.
See you later, Tanner.
See
This is just the after show, the cool down.
You got about 5 more minutes of this cool down.
Well, for you, it's just down.
Yeah. No cool with me for sure.
Well, it is past his bedtime. It's like 11 o'clock in Indiana.
Yeah, that's true.
It's getting close to my bedtime too. I usually get in bed and read about 10, so it's getting close.
We were talking about shorts earlier, and all I could think about is how you never actually wear pants. You only wear shorts. When's the last time you wore pants?
Yesterday.
Not
last
you.
time I wore pants. I don't actually remember. I mean, it's been summertime, so probably 6 months.
You told me like in the winter, you're like, I can't remember the last time I put on pants.
I mean, to leave the house, I have to put on pants, or else people would look at me like I'm insane.
You don't even leave the house. You do them like them grocery store pickups and delivery or whatever.
Not so much anymore, but yeah, sometimes. I mean,
People look
just
at
depends.
you like you're insane, Greg. I think they might know you. I think it might be the problem. It might not be the shorts.
Maybe because you're right. The pants don't stop it, but I never put 2 and 2 together. But I've noticed people do prefer when I wear pants outside the house. So
Maybe it's that shirt that says I'm a podcast host that makes you look insane.
yeah. I just walk around with the shirt that says "Ask me about my podcast," and people just walk by and I hear them mumbling like, "No fucking way, no."
You have to wear a Speedo that says that on the ass. Ask me about my podcast.
How did you know I wear an extra large Speedo?
Big brother is watching.
Good thing Jeff added this last 5 minutes because, boy, there's some dynamite here.
Well, this is what goes in the podcast and after the outro. So, but a lot of people drop off and they miss this.
So, what is the engagement rate for this podcast?
Well, I'm looking at the retention. Like we stayed at 40. As soon as I end this, it'll give me some statistics, but we stayed steady throughout this whole one. So we probably had about over 100 people, I'm sure, came in and out. But just to stay at that consistent mark is definitely good. And I think at this point, doing this for several months, we are seeing where we generally do pick up some new people, but we definitely have a core participation group that's amazing. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah, for sure. And I've been trying to get caught up on the podcast stuff because I plan to run some ads for this. I'm really interested to see if podcasting ads can bring someone to a Twitter space. I mean, we're in unknown territory, at least for me.
They do have it now where you can schedule ahead because it was like a week at a time. you couldn't like do a same space with the same name. So I can actually schedule out ahead. I don't know how far, but definitely into the future.
Yeah, because now I can tell people to press the spaces button and search for Podcasting Power Hour instead of like, go to Twitter, search for Jeff or Greg. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't even know how that would have been possible, but I got to find an easy link to send people.
I think a lot of people right now aren't realize how well they could monetize Twitter Spaces. There's a young guy I was talking to. He's on track for over $300,000 this year from Twitter Spaces sponsorship. So it's, a lot of us are still doing the podcast, and he's just gone all in on Spaces. So I think there's an opportunity there for people.
But what happened to Clubhouse?
Fuck Clubhouse. No, but we're certainly not in that salary range. But we have had several people ask Greg and I, interested enough.
Yeah, he's in the finance space, and he's probably doing about 50 shows a week.
I send them all to Greg though, but Greg is not ready to pull the trigger yet. We have to get more listens on the actual podcast, you're saying, Greg? So
no, I'm just not doing anything for like $25 or $100 or $200. Like it's just,
yeah.
I'm just not dealing with it. So what I want to do is I want to make sure we get, at least, steadily have at least 100 people in the live, and then, some sort of, I don't know, reasonable number in the podcast. I don't know what reasonable is yet, but some reasonable number in the podcast. And then, then it'll be worth the effort of doing it.
You want to say that, Michelle? Michelle, your tweet brought up a good point.
Sorry about that. I feel like people forget that they can just develop their own products and self-sponsor, whether it's a Twitter space or their actual podcast. So I have a business podcast. So I don't just do the personal finance one. I dabble, people. And for that show, I will only advertise with my products or like affiliates. But again, that goes back to strategy, right? So there's that.
Yeah, Tanner gives me no credit, but the reason he has that philosophy book is because I told him that's how he needs to have legitimacy. He wrote that sucker, and sky's the limit. Now he's a philosophy author with a podcast.
Put it on Substack, bro.
That's funny.
Well, it's past my bedtime, and I'm going to get off here. I do appreciate all of you as always. I love you all. I'm just trying to say I love you all here.
Yeah, don't be weird, man. Don't be weird.
Jeff, one thing you guys didn't talk about the videos is how much more response you're going to get from a video short that has your face versus an audiogram that just has the wave format to it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, but for me, like I said lately, I don't know why.
Well, maybe not for everybody, but
Yeah, not for Jim, certainly. But nevertheless, I know that I've just been listening to a shit ton of podcasts on YouTube. That includes just like cover art, but mostly like cover art's kind of detailed to that episode, but I don't even look at it. I just listen. I don't know why I've been doing that. I think it's because the discoverability and the search of it. Because like when you're listening to podcasts, and I think somebody was saying this earlier in the comments or something about it. When you're looking for a podcast, you are really going for the podcast that you always listen to and all that. You're typically not going after the ones you've searched. And with YouTube, I found some great things through the search and discoverabilities that it has, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for me, it does. It makes sense to have a good thumbnail and to be clear and concise with what you're bringing out for video. And if anybody wants to jump into video on YouTube, start with one camera. You don't have to make it crazy. Although there is a lot of like just big faces filling up the whole screen. And a lot of my husband watches a lot of football talk, so it's all like just talking heads, and it's not very aesthetically pleasing.
I posted in the chat, or the whatever you call this thing on the space, the timeline. I posted the short that I made today. It's nothing special, but like it fits the criteria of just get it done. And plus I'm trying to test its efficacy. So Ed, you don't have to have your hand up, man.
Well, I hate interrupting people. I'm trying to be a nice guy, even to you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that so much. You saw I sent you a heart in the DM
Yes,
for being mean to you. So
Yes,
I apologize.
And I appreciate the DM you just sent. I was about to respond. But what I wanted to do before we go is I wanted to congratulate Jeff on the successful end of his first season of Indie Podcaster. It's a great show. And for those of you who have not listened yet, you should be listening. And his 70th episode, the anniversary episode that he published today, probably his best episode. And I don't say that just because I'm the host of it. But it actually has turned out to be a really good episode. And I just wanted to congratulate Jeff on that.
Congrats, Jeff. That's a result of Podcasting Power Hour, the seasons, actually. So we debated that here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, the big thing is it gets me some time to work on other things, right? Other projects. And it was an eye-opening thing. We had a great chat that night. So no, but thank you for your kind words. It was a difficult time hammering out 70 episodes, but it was fun. All right. Jim, go ahead. You got something smart to say, Jim?
Yes, I do. I guess I'm on season 2 then. I see how it is.
Oh,
I mean,
you have a Jim show that you didn't put out?
Pixie's done like 50 episodes and she's on season 10, so I felt like it's pretty good for.
We only do 25 episode seasons, okay?
I'm on season 1 and I've put out like 500.
Jim's watching Monday Night Football. Leave him alone.
Jim does 500 episode seasons.
Just never ends. It's a decade. I love it. All right, well, I'm going to hop off here, everybody. I will see you all next week or in pop-up spaces in the meantime.
Yep. See you later, everyone. It was fun.
Night, everybody.
Night.